In 2024, a team of neuroscientists at Wellesley College published a study in the journal eNeuro that shook the field. They found evidence that consciousness may be a quantum phenomenon, operating at the subatomic level, inside the microtubules of your neurons. The scientific community called it groundbreaking. The Yoga Sutras, written around 400 CE, describe consciousness as non-local, observer-dependent, and capable of existing beyond the boundaries of time and space. That's not metaphor. That's quantum mechanics, 2,000 years early. Let's go back. Around 400 CE, though drawing on traditions potentially thousands of years older, the sage Patanjali compiled the Yoga Sutras. 196 aphorisms, a complete map of consciousness. But here's what most people miss. The Yoga Sutras are not spiritual poetry. They are a field manual. Practitioners ran experiments. They sat in deep states of stillness and observed what happened to awareness itself. And what they found maps almost perfectly onto what quantum physics describes today. Observers change what they observe. Patanjali describes a state called Samapatti, a deep meditative absorption where the observer and the observed merge. The meditator's consciousness and the object of meditation become indistinguishable. Sound familiar? It should! That's the observer effect. The principle at the heart of quantum mechanics, that the act of observation changes the observed system. Heisenberg formalized this in 1927. Patanjali mapped it around 400 CE. That's not a coincidence. And Taoist texts go even further back. The Tao Te Ching, written by Laozi around 600 BCE, describes a primordial field of potential from which all things arise and return. The Taoists called it Wu, a void that is not empty, but full of undifferentiated potential. Physicists now call it the quantum vacuum, or the zero-point field. A 2025 paper in Frontiers in Human Neuroscience proposed that conscious states may arise from the brain's resonance with exactly this field, the quantum vacuum that permeates all of space. Laozi described it 2,600 years ago. Buddhist meditation manuals from the Pali Canon, texts dating back roughly 2,500 years, describe consciousness as flickering, non-continuous, arising and passing away in discrete moments. Momentary consciousness, not a stream, a series of quantum-like events. Neuroscience now describes this as neural oscillations, discrete packets of awareness. The brain does not process reality as a continuous film. It processes it in frames, discontinuous, probabilistic, quantum adjacent. The ancients didn't just have a hunch about this, they mapped it in detail, across multiple lineages, across thousands of years. What they were doing was science, inner science, with consciousness as the instrument and the subject simultaneously. Now let's talk about what modern research is actually finding, because this is where it gets difficult to ignore. What if your brain isn't a computer, but a quantum instrument? The Penrose-Hameroff Orchestrated Objective Reduction Theory, OR, proposes that consciousness arises from quantum processes inside microtubules, tiny protein structures within your neurons. For years, most scientists dismissed this. The brain is too warm, too wet, too noisy for quantum coherence to survive. Then, the experiments started arriving. In 2024, researchers at Wellesley College published a study that directly supported the quantum consciousness hypothesis. They found that a drug stabilizing microtubules significantly delayed anesthetic-induced unconsciousness in rats. Since anesthetics are known to disrupt microtubule function, this points to microtubules as the physical seat of consciousness, and consciousness as a quantum event. Also, in 2024, research confirmed quantum superradiance in microtubules at room temperature, meaning quantum coherence isn't destroyed by biological warmth. It's protected by it. And in 2025, a paper in Frontiers in Human Neuroscience proposed that conscious states arise from the brain resonating with the quantum vacuum, the zero-point field. The author describes coherence domains where molecules vibrate in unison, protected quantum states that produce awareness. The Taoists called this resonating with the Tao. The Buddhists called this Samadhi, unified awareness. The yogis called this Purusha, pure witnessing consciousness. The scientists call it quantum coherence in cortical microcolumns. Different language, same phenomenon. The Yoga Sutras predate Schrödinger's cat by approximately 1,500 years, and it's not just consciousness research, the ancient understanding of the observer creating reality. The idea that attention itself shapes what manifests is embedded in quantum mechanics' most uncomfortable truth. Particles exist in superposition until observed. The act of looking collapses possibility into actuality. Ancient practitioners weren't waiting for physics to confirm this. They were using it. Every meditation session was, in a sense, a quantum experiment. With awareness as the instrument, you felt something this points to, even if you've never had language for it, that moment in stillness, or in the middle of a run, or at the peak of a climb. When you feel more real than usual. More present. Like the edges of yourself dissolved slightly, and you became part of something larger. That's not imagination. That's not wishful thinking. Ancient practitioners mapped that state across thousands of years because it was reproducible. They could reliably enter it, deepen it, study it, and what they consistently found was that normal waking consciousness, the thinking, planning, judging mind, is actually a narrowed, contracted version of what awareness is capable of. What if the you've always been is bigger than the version running your daily life? The Yoga Sutras use the word Chitta to describe the field of consciousness, not just the mind, but the total awareness in which experience arises. Modern quantum consciousness theory describes exactly this, a field from which individual awareness emerges, connected to a deeper structure of reality. The feeling that you're capable of more. That's not ego, that's accurate perception. Ancient practitioners understood that the ordinary contracted state, what we now might call default mode, network dominance, cortisol-driven reactivity, sympathetic nervous system overdrive, is not the baseline, it's a departure from baseline. The baseline is regulation. Openness, a state where awareness is wide and quantum coherence in your nervous system is actually possible. And here's the piece that should stop you. They built entire systems to return to that state. Daily. Reliably. Not as mystical experience reserved for monks on mountaintops, but as practical technology available to anyone willing to practice. That knowledge exists. It has always existed. And it's more relevant now, in an era of chronic dysregulation, dopamine hijacking, and attention fragmentation, than it has ever been. The ancients gave us a specific doorway into this. It's not complicated, but it requires precision. The practice is called trataka in the yogic tradition. Steady, non-blinking awareness on a single point. Not concentration as effort. Awareness as receptivity. Here's what to do. Sit comfortably. Spine upright. Not rigid. Not collapsed. The ancients were specific about this. Posture is not aesthetic. The architecture of the spine creates the conditions for awareness to move freely. Modern research confirms that spinal alignment affects vagal tone, which directly regulates the nervous system. Now soften your gaze. Let your eyes rest on one point, a candle, a spot on the wall, the middle distance in nature, not staring, receiving. Here's what the tradition teaches happens next. The thinking mind, deprived of the visual novelty it craves, begins to quiet, not through suppression, through lack of fuel. Within 2 to 3 minutes, the default mode network starts to decohere. The internal narrator loses its grip. fMRI studies show default mode network deactivation beginning within 2 to 3 minutes of focused attention practice. And in that quiet, something else becomes perceptible. A quality of awareness that isn't doing anything, that's simply present, wide, not thinking but aware. The tradition calls this the witness state, Sakshi, the observer that exists before thought arises. This is the entry point into what Patanjali spent 196 aphorisms mapping. And it is, according to quantum consciousness theory, the state in which your nervous system approaches maximum coherence, where the quantum properties of consciousness become accessible rather than buried under noise. Try it for 5 minutes today, not to achieve anything, just to see what's there when the noise settles. The ancients ran this experiment for thousands of years. You can begin tonight. What we've covered today is a fragment of a much larger map. Practitioners throughout history, yogis, Buddhist meditators, Taoist cultivators, spent lifetimes documenting the terrain of consciousness, not as philosophy, as empirical investigation, as a practice refined across generations, tested across cultures, preserved across millennia because it worked. Modern science is now, haltingly, arriving at the same coordinates they mapped thousands of years ago. This knowledge doesn't belong to academia. It doesn't belong to any institution. It belongs to everyone willing to do the work.
If something in this video resonated, if you've sensed there's a version of yourself more capable, more present, more alive than the one running your current daily life, then this is an invitation. Ancient practitioners understood exactly that feeling, and they left a complete map for what to do with it. That map is what Prana exists to transmit. The link below will take you to a guide called Why You Feel Called to Something More, and what ancient practitioners knew about that feeling that modern psychology is only beginning to catch up to. This is free, because this knowledge was never meant to be hoarded. We'll see you in the next video.